if you believe in something and you're passionate about it, it really isn't work. My vision for the store is to have some kind of impact on people's lives by educating them so they can make a decision about what they want to put in their body and offer them an opportunity to be able to eat high quality foods.
Welcome to Golden Girl, a space where we dive deep into health, healing, connection, and community. I'm your host, Becca Golden, and this podcast is all about sharing and documenting my journey. Each episode, we'll discuss topics like health and wellness, what I'm learning in therapy, work-life balance, relationships, community, and all the ways I strive for more aliveness and presence every day. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Golden Girl. I'm so excited for today's guest. I'm sitting here with Jimbo Someck, the founder of Jimbo's Naturally. Jimbo's is a natural and organic foods store. There are 4 locations. It's in San Diego. And if you've been following along with the podcast, you know that my health is super important to me. I'm doing absolutely everything in my power to give my body everything it needs to be the most healthy that it can be. And food is the foundation of that because food is something that we are consuming and putting into our bodies every day. So it's extra important that your food is high quality and coming from a good source that you can trust. Jimbo's is really setting the standard for what it means to be committed to organic, sustainable, and high quality foods that are not just good for your body, but also good for the community. And they've been committed to those values for over 40 years, way before it was popular and trendy, which is really amazing. On today's episode, we get to hear from Jimbo himself about why it's so important to be eating healthy foods that you can trust and why Jimbo's has been so successful. Jimbo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for the intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah. To start us off, can you tell us about how Jimbo's has come to be? What was your vision for it and how did it get started?
Well, that may take a long time, but I had finished 1 year of college back east, and I decided that ever since I could remember, I was going to school, and I decided I needed to take a break. And my brother was out in San Diego, so I decided to come and visit him. And my thought was I was going to travel up and down the coast, to hitchhike up and down the coast. And I think the second day I was visiting him, he said, well, you might want to just volunteer at the food co-op. And this was in Ocean Beach, San Diego. And I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I went there, and it was a co-op. I mean, it was a store. It was actually a converted one-bedroom apartment, one-bedroom house. And the register was a muffin tin, and people would come up and they'd tell you, they would weigh their own products. And I was, as a volunteer there, I was getting paid $1 worth of food credit for every 3 hours I worked, which was 33 cents an hour. And I had finished, my first year of school was at Cornell, and I was thinking, all right, I finished 1 year of Cornell, and I'm going to, even in 1973, to think that I was getting paid 33 cents an hour, I said, I was a little embarrassed. So I said, you know what? I'd rather take nothing, and I'm going to say I'm just volunteering, just doing some good service. And I thought I was just going to hang out there for a little bit and then do my traveling. But I got so ingrained in the store, and I was learning a heck of a lot about food, organics, that I eventually let it, I never did do the hitchhiking up and down the coast. And I eventually became part of the group that was managing the store. At one point, probably about 4 or 5 months after I'd been there, someone had come up to me and said, can you sign this document? I said, what is a document? And it was a State Board of Equalization tax return. And I had never seen, I didn't even know what it was really. And I said, why do you want me to sign it? And they said, well, you seem to be pretty good in math, and we don't really know what it means either. So at that point, because I had kind of embraced the co-op, I said, you know what, I'm going to learn about business. And so I had taken a leave of absence from Cornell, and I decided to go back to school at San Diego State and take a whole bunch of business courses. And I thought it was a temporary job that I was doing at the OB People's Food Store, but it lasted for 11 years. But the way the organization worked, it was considered what was called a workers' collective, where every person who worked there had a vote. And sometimes even the community had a vote. It was very inefficient because you would vote something in one week, and then if a group of people didn't like it, they would bring the forces in the following week, and they might turn it around and vote it back out. And I was getting tired of it. So at some point after 11 years or 10 years or so, I said, you know what, I'm going to open my own store. And so I opened my first store in 1984 in North Park. It was a converted clothing store, and that's how I got started. And it taught me a lot. I mean, I learned a lot at the co-op because I was able to make mistakes and figure out, what the right way to do it. But I've always felt fortunate that even when I've had my own stores, that I've made a ton of mistakes, but that I was able to pick myself up off the floor and learn from them, and hopefully always do a little bit better. And there have been a lot of experiences that I've had through my years that have helped me kind of understand how to run a business. I mean, even for example, like working at the co-op, as inefficient as it was, one of the things it taught me was the value of having everybody who's working for you feel like they're part of the company, and to make it inclusive. So, I try to get consensus, but I understand that at some point somebody's got to make a decision, and it doesn't always have to be my way, but I think the intent is to make sure that the people I work with have a voice and that I'm listening to them. And sometimes, like I said, we could be in a meeting and I could say, I'm thinking, I don't really feel it's the right direction to take, but I recognize that the person who I'm talking to it's their area, and it's important to let them make decisions, and they get the feedback from the decision they make. I may say, this is my hesitation, but so it doesn't always have to be my way. And so that's like kind of one of the things I always, feel grateful for my time that I spent at the co-op. Anyway, one store, it's interesting because the North Park store, it was interesting. I would guess you could almost call it an experiment, because after the North Park store I opened in 92, I opened my Del Mar store, Carmel Valley store, in 97. And I will say that after opening up the Carmel Valley store in 97, I realized that it was a challenge to maintain the North Park store, in part because I had gone overboard in giving the workers a say in the store. And so when I wasn't there, whoever was managing it had a hard time, getting everybody to be on the same page, because they felt it was like theirs. And you always want your staff to feel like it was theirs, but they really felt like, it was theirs to make decisions. So I actually ended up selling that store in 97. And I opened my Escondido store at that time. And then subsequently, I opened up my Carlsbad store in 2003 and my Forest store in 2007. And then I actually opened up a store downtown in Horton Plaza, which is an iconic mall in San Diego. But that didn't turn out to be so well. I ended up having to sue there were two landlords, and they paid me off because they wanted to change over the whole mall, and they eventually closed all the storefronts, and I was the only one open in the mall, and they put a construction fence. They closed down my two entrances. It's kind of funny, but the only way to get into the store was you go into the parking lot, and a golf cart would pick you up, and you would have to drive around like 5-10 minutes. And sometimes if the golf cart wasn't there because it was taking somebody else, you would have to wait 20 minutes or whatever, and then you go through a tunnel and go upstairs. It was a nightmare. So I ended up having 2 lawsuits, which, we were paid, but it was an unfortunate situation. But So we have 4 stores, and we have 2 more that we have leases signed that we're going to open in 2028, we think. And it's been a great journey. It's been a great process in which I've learned a hell of a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I like to say that we've been pretty successful from a financial standpoint, but I think more importantly, I'm happy with the way we take care of our staff. My belief is that there's a lot of way you can gain new customers, and a lot of people go do some form of advertising, whether it's social media, talk about your prices. But to me, the best way to do that is to take care of your staff, because if your staff feels good about coming to work, then they're going to create an environment that the customers feel good coming into. And the best form of advertising you can have is having customers tell their family or friends. And I think we've done that, and we've been pretty successful through the 40 plus years that we've had the company. So it's a lot in between those 40 years that I haven't touched upon, but I'm sure some of your questions will lead me to, talk about some of the specifics.
It's really an amazing story, and it's so amazing that you have opened so many locations and that you're learning from each one of them.
Yeah.
What was the vision at the beginning? What did you envision that it would become, and how has it changed over time?
I didn't think it was going to be to the extent that it has been. I was just happy to open my first store, and my vision was really to expose as many people as possible to organics, because I was a firm believer back then about organic foods. And at that time, it wasn't really something that was in the mainstream. And I know when I first opened my North Park store that half our produce was organic and half of it was conventional. And sometimes because you couldn't get enough organics, you would be selling the same product, both organic and conventional. And I know at one point, my parents were concerned because the organic price of of a produce item was, somewhat more expensive than the conventional. And they said, how can you trust that the customer is telling you whether it's organic or not? And I said, and I believe to this day, that I think our customer at that time, especially, it was like a badge to say that you were buying organics. And if they were going to buy organics, they weren't going to diminish that. I think at that time, people just were proud that they were buying organics. And so my hope was to expose as many people as possible. I remember thinking to myself, at some time, I hope that every grocery store on every corner of every town and every city and every state of the country would carry organics. And I remember thinking to myself, that would be success to me. And in the back of my mind, I'd say, it would probably mean it's a lot more competition. But I said, even if I wasn't able to successfully navigate through the competition, I would just be happy that not only were people eating healthier foods, but the environment was going to be in a better space because people were growing organically. But I also had a firm belief that we had gotten a head start because we were in the organic world before others. And I said, I think we would be able to compete. And I think we have been successful. And I think part of that success is really due to we walk the talk. We have a firm belief in organics, and now we talk about regenerative organics. And I think that belief and not wavering from that has kind of separated us from some of the competition, because some of the stores, I'm sure, are carrying organics only not because they really believe in it or feel it's any better or because of the environment. I think they do it because they understand that there's customer demand. But there's a different feeling between doing it because you just want to sell it and doing it because you believe in it. And our management team, and especially myself, we're passionate about what we're selling. We believe it is better for you. And we never waver from that belief. And as some of the competition has have brought in maybe some conventional items, and even some of the conventional stores carry organic. It's hard to sometimes differentiate between the two. We've continued to go towards the edge of the world, so to speak, by carrying our produce is 100% organic. Our bulk is 100% organic. Every one of our stores has a large food service component, and 99% of the ingredients we use is organic. And we, like I said, we push regenerative organics. So it really differentiates our store from a lot of other natural food stores, because I think our customers recognize that this isn't just we're not just trying to sell it. We believe in it. And I think our customers appreciate that.
You really did pioneer this. I mean, 40 years ago, nobody was doing this. It's so amazing that this is what you've stood for the whole time. And as you mentioned, now it's this push for regenerative, organic. What are the other emerging standards that you've seen over the recent years that you've incorporated into the Jimbo standards?
Well, first of all, I want to object to pioneer, because one, I don't think I was a pioneer, and also it makes me feel a lot older than I like to think I am. But that
you want me to rephrase?
No, you can do it. That's fine. Certainly, probably 15 years ago, non-GMO became a catchword, and we've taken a strong stand around non-GMOs. We don't bring in any product that has any non-GMO ingredients unless it's been verified as non-GMO by the non-GMO project. So
any product with GMO ingredients.
Any product with GMOs, potentially GMO ingredients with it, unless it's been verified as non-GMO by the non-GMO projects. And when we did that, we took that stance probably 15 years ago. I remember our buyer coming to me and saying, "You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because, if somebody comes in and they want to buy the product and we don't carry it, they're going to go somewhere else to get it, and you're going to lose a customer." And I said, well, there are a couple things I felt about that. I said, one, we need to walk the talk, and we don't, that's not something that we really feel is the right kind of product to have. And I said, if we do a good job of training and educating our staff, and they are able to communicate that to our customers, then hopefully our customers will, feel like we're doing the right thing for them, and that they're not going to go somewhere else. They're going to feel more dedicated, more loyal to us, because they know that even though we may lose, potentially sales by not having the product, we're doing it because we don't think it's a product that we want to put on our shelves, and they're going to appreciate that. And I think we've continued to do that. We've continued to have that standard, and we're trying to remove any even grandfathered products that have GMO ingredients in it. So we have a very few that we haven't replaced.
Have you noticed that certain foods over time change their ingredients, so you have to review them to make sure that they're approved for your shelves?
Well, yeah, we have pretty strict ingredient standards that we allow into the store. And we're always reviewing the standards and trying to upgrade the quality of the products we have. And I can tell you, for example, we've carried one of the most popular kombuchas on the market today is GT's kombucha. And I remember when GT Dave got started, he would come in our stores and do demos, and the GT's kombucha had all organic ingredients. And subsequently, there were a lot of competition, and we brought in other kombuchas, and all the kombuchas we have only organic ingredients in it. And a couple of years ago, we found out that GT's was changing their ingredients and going to conventional ingredients, not organic. And I actually had a conversation with GT Dave, and I kind of tried to understand why he switched, and it was a lengthy conversation and back and forth. But at the end of the day, he said it's just the way it is right now. And GT's kombucha was 40% of our kombucha sales.
Whoa.
And we just decided we're not going to carry it. And because all the other kombuchas had organic ingredients, we didn't want to dilute the kombucha set by having even our most popular kombucha, which had changed from organic to conventional ingredients. So we communicated that to our customers, and almost all our customers said they appreciated the decision we made, and even to the point where they said, some of them said, "Hey, GT's is my favorite kombucha, but I appreciate the fact that you're not carrying it." And so, yeah, there are companies that do it. We actually, because we're very involved in the San Diego market, and we have a lot of the smaller startups come to us because they want to get in our stores. It really, part of our mission is to work with these startups and help them get into our store and on our shelves. And sometimes what that means is trying to convince them that they need to switch from conventional ingredients to organic ingredients. And usually the first thing is, well, the price is higher. And we say, well, but if you're going to get into our store, that's what you're going to have to do. And that's what our customers looking for. Not to pay more, but that they're looking for the higher quality product that's organic. And so we've been the first on a number of products that have entered the market to be the first one to carry it. I was just listening to the other day I don't know if it was a podcast or whatever, where Jennifer Garner, who's part of the baby food company Once Upon a Farm, and she actually mentions in her podcast that Jimbo's was the first retail store to carry Once Upon a Farm. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Working with these smaller brands who are trying to get into the stores is just one of the ways that you engage with the community. Can you tell us a little bit about the other ways?
We don't do a lot of advertising. What we do is try to support various different causes. We have what we call our mission statement and Bill of Rights. And our Bill of Rights talks about making sure that we take care of our staff, that we take care of our customers, that we are socially responsible by giving back to our community, by being a financially strong company, and by doing it with honesty, integrity, and respect. And what I always tell people when we first started was that in the beginning, and it makes sense, I was probably most focused on just trying to make sure that we have enough money in the bank to pay our bills. And that was, not that I didn't care about the others, but that was probably my priority. But as time has gone on and I recognized that we were going to be successful, I started to focus more on making sure that we were taking care of our staff and making sure our customers felt welcome and appreciated the environment that we had in the stores, by being involved in the community, supporting different events, and of course, by doing it with honesty, integrity, and respect. And what I tell people is the more I focused on that and not making decisions that were based on what's going to make us the most money, I found that our bottom line got better. And I think that's because when you focus on the bottom line only, you don't spend as much time making sure that your staff is taken care of, or your customers are taken care of, or perhaps not being as involved in the community. So your decisions are based on your bottom line, not the other items. And I think if you take care of the other items, then the bottom line will take care of itself. And so it really has been kind of an epiphany for me when I recognized that a number of years ago, and we've continued to go down that path of making decisions. And I know when you just walk the store, because you used to come into the old Jimbo's in Carmel Valley, and 6 years ago, we moved into a location that was about 100 yards away. And one of the things that we decided when we opened this store was to get rid of all water that we sell in plastic. And if you look at that from a decision of what sells in most grocery stores, water and plastic, if you took probably the top 100 items in a grocery store, you might find 25 or 30 of them being water and plastic. Not maybe by dollar, but just by item count.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because people don't typically, especially in California, they don't drink the tap water. They want water in, clean water. And I remember my discussion before we opened this Carmel Valley store, the new one, telling my CEO that when we opened the store, I didn't want to carry the water in plastic. And he, I think, kind of laughed and said, well, yeah, sure. And then a few months before we opened, I reminded him of that and says, you're serious, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he embraced it. He was all for it. And subsequently, none of our stores carry water in plastic. But I think the point is that it wouldn't make sense to do that if you were thinking just bottom line. If you look at it strictly from a profit perspective, you probably wouldn't make that decision. And I remember when the first day we opened the store, we had a grand opening ceremony and there were a significant amount of customers outside. And I told them that. And I think they all cheered and clapped. And I'm sure some of our customers have to go somewhere else. It's an inconvenience for them. But I will say certainly our sales have increased, but we sell more water now, probably 2 or 3 times as much water as we did before. And I think our customers have come to appreciate the fact that we don't carry water in plastic. It means a lot to them because I think there's definitely an association with most organic stores that there's some environmental component to the store, and just being organics is considered more sustainable in agriculture. And so I think our customer already had that appreciation, and there's a lot of concern of plastics, even more so now with the nanoplastics and being in all kinds of different things and getting into your body. And so I think it's another means in which, we didn't do it for any other reason because it's just who we are. And through the years, I've learned that, hey, if customers like it, we should let people know so that they know this is who we are. And again, we got a lot of appreciation, and we still get a lot of appreciation. And it's one of the things that we're really proud to say, hey, we don't carry. We even sign our signature on our emails, home of the plastic-free water aisle. So just to let everybody know.
That's powerful, especially given that was a decision that you made, knowing that it might negatively impact your profits, and you still made the decision anyway.
Yeah.
And an example of what you were saying before, it ended up improving your sales of water.
Yeah. Well, the other part that we did is at each store, not only do we get rid of water and plastic, but we have a separate water vending machine where if you bring in your own hydro flask, you can fill it up for free so that you don't have to pay for it. So if you're coming in to get a bottled water, you can bring and if you look around, it's amazing. There are so many people now that wherever they go, they're carrying their own hydro flask or whatever it is that they put their, liquid in. And so we have a lot of people that come in and just fill it up, and they don't even have to pay for the water. And so it's the grand experiment.
How have you noticed that these changes have affected your own health? I want to shift to you personally now. You really embody all of these values that you lead here. You represent them in your own personal life as well in various ways. Talk to us about your personal philosophy on health in your own life.
When I was younger, I wouldn't say I was a meat and potatoes person. My mom would cook fresh food almost all the time. But I didn't have any dietary preferences really. And it wasn't until I came out here and I started understanding more about natural foods and organics that I switched my diet. And I was a vegetarian. As soon as I came out here, I went from eating meat to becoming a vegetarian. And then when I opened my first store, right before I opened my first store, I got hepatitis. And I went to see the doctor, and he looked at me and says, I was really yellow. And he said, "What have you been doing?" And I said, "I'm opening up this natural food store and I'm working, 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week." And he had run some tests and he says, "Well, you can't work for another few weeks." I said, "There's no way." I said, "I'm out of money and I need to get the store open." We argued back and forth, and then finally he said, "Okay, I'll let you work 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And within 3 or 4 weeks, you'll be over it. But come back and see me in 2 weeks." So I went back and saw him, and he did say at the time, this goes to the diet piece, he said, I said, "Is there certain things that I should avoid?" And one of the things he said, "You should avoid dairy products." And that was something that I decided I would do. Anyway, I went back and saw him in 2 weeks, and he said, "Wow, you look like, you did some tests that you're pretty much over it. You still have some yellow coloring, but all the other tests show that you're pretty much through it." He said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "I've been working 14 hours a week, 7 days a week." But that motivated me to stop eating dairy products. So basically, since I opened that store at 40 years plus, I've been a vegan. I would say that when I would go out to eat, it was somewhat nebulous from a standpoint. I had a don't ask, don't tell policy. So if I was sometimes ordered dessert, I didn't ask, is there egg in the dessert or not? But probably in the last 10 years, I'm actually gone where I do ask that question. And my kids, when we used to travel and I wouldn't ask the question, or I would say, they would get a dessert and they knew it had dairy in it, but they wanted me to try it. If I asked them, "Does it have dairy in it?" they would say, "Don't ask, don't tell," because they wanted me to eat it. If it didn't have dairy, they would say, "Oh no, there's no dairy in it." But if it did, they would say, "Don't ask, no, don't tell," which is my way of them saying it has dairy, but don't ask the question and just eat it. But so I actually switched to being a vegan. I feel really good. I've been very physically active. I am what I call an obsessed runner.
You call yourself obsessed, or your family calls you obsessed?
Both. I don't say obsessed in front of them, but they say obsessed if they were talking about me. As a matter of fact, when we do travel and wherever we might stay, they know that my priority number one is wherever we stay, there's got to be an easy way to get to somewhere where I can run. And I'm probably obsessed because I've had 2 streaks of 6 years plus without missing a day.
Wow.
And now I'm, about almost headed towards 2 years without missing a day. But it gets a little bit tougher the older I've gotten. The challenge is you miss a day, you have to start over at 1. And so, you're going 6 years, you're talking about 2,000 days in a row. So when you start at 1, it's a long time.
So when you made it to the second 6 years, did you just
No,
because it was another 6?
I run typically no matter how awful I feel. It started out as a challenge to myself. I wanted to run 100 straight days. And I was halfway through and I got sick, and so I stopped. And this was in my pretty young days. And then, so I said, I'm going to start over again. Making it to 100 is a lot different than making it to 2,000. And as I got closer to 100, I started getting a little concerned. I said, so what am I going to do when I hit 100? Because during that 100 days, I had, I wasn't feeling well. I was tired. I was younger. Sometimes I would go out and late, and I'd have to get up early in the morning. I had run out of excuses. I realized a lot of times that's all they were excuses, that I could do it if I wanted to do it. I just would give a reason why I didn't want to do it. So I kept on going. And so there are times when I've been, say, reasonably incapacitated, then I've gone out and continued. But there were a couple times, one time I broke my ankle, so I couldn't do that for a while. And then I've off and on have had some back issues, and I could barely walk. But for the most part, I will, get up and run. So we'll see how far I go this time. Part of me always thinks, Hannah, let something happen to me so I don't have to worry about it. But I just get started on it again. But yeah, but the one thing I've realized is I've gotten to where I have on my dietary journey I'm the product of my own experience. Just as everything in life, you're a product of your own experiences. So I don't get up and on a soapbox and try to tell people this is the way they should eat from the standpoint, hey, you should eat meat, you shouldn't eat meat, you should eat, should be a fruitarian, whatever, or you should be a vegan, vegetarian. I don't preach. What I would get up on the soapbox is saying, whatever your dietary journey is, that you eat the highest quality of those products. So if you're going to eat produce, get organic or regenerative produce. If you're going to eat meats, get no hormone, antibiotic, free range, pasture fed, just eat the best quality products that you can. Because there's a belief that I have that, as you stated, relative to your own health journey, that the importance of what you put in your body. And it's hard. I'm no scientist. I'm no doctor, but it's hard to imagine that what you put in your body doesn't have an impact on you. If it didn't, then why take drugs? Drugs are, when they put in your body, they have an impact on you. And so, if food is nourishment, and if you put chemicals on your food, then, it's going to have an impact on you. And so I always, that's where I come from. It's not whether you eat meat or you don't, you eat dairy. And so for some people, eating meat is an issue for them. They have a philosophy relative to, they don't want to eat any kind of animal product. And I can appreciate it. But it's not for me, I believe, to judge people, on their dietary. And when I look back on even my relationship with my own family that I grew up with and how I have changed my diet and what I eat, I did never preach to them about how I eat. And I remember when I gave up meat and eventually dairy, they would make fun of me or whatever. But as time has gone by, they've switched. Some of them don't even eat, they're vegetarian. They try to buy organics when they can. And it's interesting because it's not like I said I get up on a soapbox and preach anything, but they know when I'm coming in or if we're going to go out to eat that there has to be something that I'm, going to partake in. So it's sometimes it's not getting in your face. It's just by being who you are that you can change people. And I think that kind of goes to what I was saying about when you asked me what my vision for the store is, to have some kind of impact on people's lives by at least educating them so they can make a decision about what they want to put in their body, and at least offer them an opportunity to be able to eat high quality foods. And so it's been the foundation of having the Jimbo stores.
That's great. My last question was going to be, where do you see Jimbo's heading next? That seems like a good segue into that.
That's an interesting question. As you know, I have 4 kids. They've all been involved in the store when they were younger, and all did various different things. Michael, who you went to high school with, really started, I think, when he was about 13 or 14, and he was motivated to work in the stores because he wanted to make money to buy a car by the time he was 16. And he probably out of all the kids was the most interested or most involved. I used to be surprised because he would know some of our staff better than I would. But any of my kids, I would say that if they wanted to get involved in the business, they should do it not because it's a job, but because they really were at least somewhat passionate about it. I always feel like I'm fortunate because the work I'm doing, and it is work, but I'm passionate and I believe in it so much that sometimes you don't think it's work. Someone said that if you believe in something and you're passionate about it, it really isn't work. I mean, but it is, but I would want my kids to do what they feel resonates with them. So I got to figure out how to take a step back, and I'm still processing that because part of what I want to do as I've gotten older is to be able to spend some time with my kids and travel. But at the same time, Jimbo's is growing. We have 2 stores that, as I said earlier, we're opening up in 2028. We're still continuing to look at other sites. But irrespective of the level of involvement I have with the company, I hope that we can continue to blaze a path that encourages and inspires other natural food stores or entrepreneurs to follow suit. Because I think there's a need in this world, in this country, to be able to educate consumers about high quality products and to offer customers the ability to buy products that we carry. And I think we've been successful from the standpoint when you asked the question, my vision, and I said, my hope would be that there's organic foods in every grocery store on every corner in every town. I think that's pretty true right now. And so my hope would be that as years go by, that more and more customers are eating that way, not from a profit motive, but because I think it's better for the environment, better for your health, better for your quality of life. And so that would be my hope as part of the industry we're in for Jimbo's and for other entrepreneurs or stores like us. I got a question for you.
Okay.
So I know when we talked before, you said that when you knew me, how many years ago was it that 15 years ago or so?
17 maybe.
Yeah, that you knew who I was, you knew the store, but there was not really a recognition of what we did, and you hadn't gone down through your own journey of food. But what's that been like for you to start to figure out for yourself what it is that you want in your life from food? Because to me, you represent the kind of person that we want to be able to serve. And I'll just give you one side story. We never used to sell meat in the stores, our first store, and then we sold meat package. And then at some point, we decided to open up have a meat counter. And I know there were a number of customers that were upset. And one of the reasons why we decided to open up to sell meat was because when my wife was pregnant and she had an urge to eat protein, she had to go somewhere else to get it. And I realized that what we sell at Jimbo shouldn't be what I eat. It should be what everybody would eat, but just the highest quality of those products. And as much as our core customer was the basis for our success, my hope was to be able to have products that people who didn't know much about natural or organic foods would still be able to come in and say, oh, I can buy this, I can buy that, and maybe they eventually switch their diet. So for me, you as someone who probably had been in this, I don't know how many times you had been in the store, but I know we had conversations in the old store when you were younger. But now you come in, and I think because of your own journey, you can see what we do and probably understand to a greater extent what we're doing. And so you're the kind of person that I'm thinking, all right, that didn't happen at Jimbo's, that happened through your own journey or whatever. But you had to also find a place where you can find the foods that you wanted to get. And those are the people that I want to attract, people who are open to changing their life. So you tell me what that was like for you.
Yeah, it was unexpected for me, for sure. When I was younger, I just ate whatever my parents had around the house. I didn't really do my own grocery shopping when I was growing up. And in high school, we would go off campus and eat stuff that my parents wouldn't be buying for me. So I would get like whatever processed stuff, just like the greasiest.
Nico's tortilla, Nico's.
Yeah, it was like burritos, and I was eating all sorts of stuff that was not really great for me, but it was because it was a treat that my parents didn't know about. And as I got older, I continued to feed myself the things that my body was addicted to. I was addicted to carbs and sugar and processed things. And I didn't really know what it was like to live in a body that wasn't addicted to those things. And eventually I discovered a ketogenic diet. I had been pre-diabetic, and then I just happened to, I didn't really know that that was a bad thing. Shockingly, my doctor didn't make it a big deal, so I just kind of glossed over it. And years later, I discovered a ketogenic diet, and for the first time, I understood that my food choices actually had an impact on how I felt, not just how I looked. I always knew, okay, if you eat less, you'll lose weight, and if you aren't eating fattening foods, high in calories, my mom would do low-fat everything. So I knew food had an impact on how I looked, but I really never understood that what I was eating could truly impact my hunger signals. That when I did keto, it was the first time in my life that I felt full. I was like, wow, I actually feel like I don't want to keep eating now. So that was probably when I first understood that food went beyond just this thing that was enjoyable that would change how you looked. And fast forward probably 7 years, and taking me to maybe 2 years ago, my health started declining. I had a mold situation. There were all sorts of things that happened. And I had to do absolutely everything in my power to make myself feel better at whatever cost. And that meant eliminating any outlying factors that could be making me feel worse. So I think the first thing I stopped doing was eating processed foods. I started eating all of my meals prepared from scratch. I wasn't so focused on organic versus non-organic. I was just focused on making the food myself without any suspicious other ingredients, because everything was prepared by me. And that was a huge impact on my health. I already felt better just from being in control of what I was choosing to put in my body. And I also stopped drinking alcohol almost 2 years ago because I was really focused on just not putting anything harmful into my body. And to be honest, it was very overwhelming to make sense of what was harmful and what wasn't, especially when you're dealing with chronic illness. I developed something called MCAS. It's mast cell activation syndrome. It's something that a lot of people with mold exposure can deal with, and it makes you sensitive to histamines. Histamines are in very healthy foods like avocado, tomato, strawberries, kombucha, anything fermented. And so if you think you're eating healthy and you eat a salad that's a spinach salad with tomato and vinegar-based dressing, and you feel awful after you've eaten just a salad, you have no idea why. So I tried to really understand what foods were actually doing in my body, what the nutritional components were. I knew I was low in potassium, so I started drinking aloe juice, just things that I didn't understand. I didn't understand the world of micronutrients, which is so important as well. And they don't teach micronutrients enough. When you're growing up, you have no idea what a nutrient-dense food looks like versus a non-nutrient-dense food. It's very easy. It's like, what's colorful, what's growing on a tree, what's growing on a plant versus what doesn't have a lot of color and was created in a factory. It's pretty easy to discern, but if you're never taught that something is nutrient-dense, meaning it's giving your body what it needs to function, versus something that is not giving your body really anything except another process to keep up with. They don't teach that to you. And so it's almost like, I always say that chronic illness saved my life, because if I hadn't been struggling with my health, I wouldn't have learned about these things. And from a customer point of view, it is so complicated and confusing, which is why when I walk into Jimbo's, it's a breath of fresh air. You have signs everywhere explaining why you've made the decisions you've made. I walked into your produce aisle. You have a sign about those, I forgot what they're called, the growing
hydroponics.
Towers. Yeah, what are they called?
Hydroponics.
Yeah. You have a sign that explains that is considered organic now, and is it Jimbo's stance is to not?
No, we carry it, but there is a good faction of especially farmers who are early on organic growers who feel like that fact that in hydroponics you're not growing in soil, and to be really growing, you need to really fertilize the soil, and it's so valuable to the whole idea of organics. So we label as much as possible those items that are hydroponically grown, even though they're still considered organic, because some of our customers really only want to eat items that are grown organically in soil and not just hydroponically. But that's part of our educational piece that we try to, give our staff and our customers.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that about the hydroponics, so it's really amazing walking through Jimbo's. There's a sign, and it educates me as the customer. I'm so overwhelmed by all the information out there. I'm no longer on a ketogenic diet. I try to incorporate more of a balanced approach, but I always make sure that I'm focused on organic. I try to focus on regenerative farmed, because I now know that if it's grown in regenerative soil, it's going to be even more nutrient dense than something that's not. So these are things that I want to be putting in my body as the most nutrient dense, the highest quality, but I don't want to have to do the research about where to find that. So in Jimbo's, it's really nice that I can just trust that your standards are as high as mine. It's so much less taxing on the customer when you can walk into a store and know that their standards match your own. So you don't have to be making decisions and reading labels every aisle you walk down. It's really amazing.
Yeah, well, that's an incredible journey you've been on, and kudos to you to having survived the burritos and everything else and have gotten to the place where you're at. We're all on a different journey and a different path to get there. And as I said, my hope is that as we go through years and years of looking back and going forward, that more and more people just continue to gravitate towards eating a healthy diet for themselves. And yeah, the ultra-processed foods is, even in the last few years, they've done more and more studies how it's probably the foundation of a lot of medical issues, obesity, and there is probably some science to the cravings they create because of what they put in the chemicals that are in the ultra-processed foods were intended to make you feel like you wanted to go back and eat them again. So you've done a good job educating yourself.
Yeah, well, and you've done an amazing job building so many stores that are giving customers access to foods that are making them feel good.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well.
Cool.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. We'll hopefully do it again in another year or two.
Yeah, as often as you want.
We'll see where you're at, and we'll see where I'm at.
Yeah. And for all of the listeners who are tuning in, if you're in the San Diego area, definitely make sure to check out your local Jimbo's. And if you're not in San Diego, please make sure to support your local grocers and farmers who are providing high quality, nutrient dense, organic, regenerative farm foods.
Thank you.
Thank you.